In today's fast-paced world, many of us feel drained, sluggish, and disconnected from our bodies. But what if the key to feeling vibrant and energized lies in an ancient tradition? What if the secret to optimal health has been around for centuries, waiting to be rediscovered? Digestive issues, low energy, and weakened immune system are becoming all too common. Could the modern diet be the blame? Processed foods, antibiotic, and stress are disrupting our gut health, leading to a cascade of health problems. Enter fermented foods, the nature's probiotic-rich powerhouse. When you see a bubbling jar of kimchi, a rope bowl of natto, or a crock of old-school sauerkraut, you are looking at a living food teeming with beneficial microbes that transform simple ingredients into something more digestible, more flavorful, and often more functional for your body. So let's define what we mean by fermented food. In plain English, fermentation is a controlled bloom of microbes that feed on sugars in food and through their enzymes changes its chemistry. Acids lower the pH, new flavors appear, and the food becomes naturally preserved. That's why our ancestors did it long before anyone talked about the microbiome. Why does this matter for our health? Because the gut is an ecosystem and diversity is strength. In a landmark human study from Stanford, a 10-week diet rich in fermented food increased gut microbiome diversity and reduced circulating inflammatory proteins, signals linked to better immune tone. Now let's meet three icons. First, kimchi, the fermented Korean delight. Napa cabbage, radish, garlic, ginger, chili, marinated and fermented by lactic acid bacteria. And the result? The crunchy, tangy side that Koreans eat daily. Beyond taste, randomized trials and controlled studies suggest fermented kimchi can improve insulin sensitivity and even favorably shift lipid profiles. That means better handling of blood sugar and in some cases, improvement in cholesterol measures. Second, natto, the Japanese superfood. These sticky, stingy soybeans are fermented by Bacillus subtilis variable. Natto, the two standout features here are vitamin K2, specifically MK7, and an enzyme called nattokinase. K2 helps activate proteins that shuttle calcium into bone, supporting skeletal health, while nattokinase has been studied for cardiovascular effects, including fibrinolytic activity. If you use anticoagulant medications, talk to your clinicians before making natto a habit. Third, traditionally preserved vegetables, the global wellness secret. From European sauerkraut to Latin American curtido and countless regional pickles, lactic acid fermentation turns harvest vegetables into living pantry staples. They deliver beneficial bacteria and organic acid and often make plant nutrients more bioavailable while adding crunch and complexity to everyday meals. A quick but important nuance: not every fermented food automatically qualifies as a probiotic by the strict scientific definition. Probiotic refers to specific, well-characterized live strains that confer a health benefits at known doses. Still, many fermented foods act as vehicles for live microbes and other biotic compounds that can support gut ecology. We will keep our language very precise and our recommendation practical. So, how do these foods support your microbiome? Think of them as gardeners for your gut ecosystem. They bring in new microbial species and metabolites like lactic acid and bioactive peptides that can crowd out less helpful microbes, tune immune signaling, and enhance barrier integrity. In human data, that shows up as greater microbial diversity and lower inflammation, two patterns we want to cultivate over time. Taste, culture, science, they all meet here. A spoonful of kimchi alongside your eggs, a small bowl of natto with rice and scallions, a forkful of sauerkraut on a grain bowl of sandwich. Start small, 1 or 2 forkfuls a day, and build. Look for unpasteurized, refrigerated products labeled live and active culture. And remember, these foods can be salty, so balance your day accordingly and hydrate. Small daily servings of living foods can steadily shape a healthier gut ecosystem. Microbes produces enzymes, phytases and proteases that reduce phytates and tannins and pre-digest complex plant compounds, increasing minerals such as iron, zinc, and calcium, and vitamin bioavailability. Lactic acid bacteria and other microbes produce short-chain fatty acid, acetate, propionate, and butyrate, which feed colonocytes, strengthen barrier function, and have anti-inflammatory signaling. Microbial molecules and metabolites interact with gut immune cells, called GALT, increase secretory IgA, and downregulate pro-inflammatory cytokines. Human feeding trials show that decreased systemic inflammatory proteins with fermented food diets. Metabolites, vagal signaling, and immune mediators can alter neurotransmitter systems and brain inflammation, potentially improving mood and cognitive clarity in susceptible people. Evidence growing in humans and mixed stronger in clinical population. We talk about gut health like it's one organ, but it's actually an entire ecosystem. What you eat every day reshapes the ecosystem, and a small, regular habit eating living, fermented foods can shift that ecosystem toward resilience. Fermentation is not just about preservation or flavor, it's biology at work. They break down complex fibers and reduce anti-nutrients like phytates and tannins, which normally bind minerals and make them harder to absorb. That means that many fermented vegetables and legumes can actually deliver more usable iron, zinc, and B vitamins than their raw counterparts. Imagine your salad not only tastes brighter, but your body can access more of the nutrients in it. A small bowl of kimchi, sauerkraut, or a few tablespoons of pickled vegetables with a meal can make a measurable difference over time. Most of your immune cells live in the gut, beneficial microbes provide continual low-level stimulation that trains your immune cells, improving pathogen defense while encouraging tolerance to harmless items. Human feeding studies of fermented food diets show consistent changes in immune signaling that point toward a more balanced immune state. Better barrier functions, more secretory IgA at the gut lining, and lower systemic activation signals that can otherwise drive chronic disease risk. One of the clearest findings in recent human work is that diets rich in fermented foods can reduce markers of systemic inflammation. Researchers measured a drop in several inflammatory proteins over weeks of increased fermented food intake, alongside a rise in microbiome diversity. Less inflammation means lower risk for chronic conditions from heart disease to metabolic dysfunction. Mechanistically, microbes in fermented foods create metabolites, short-chain fatty acids, and other bioactive molecules that help calm local inflammation and strengthen the gut barrier. Think of those metabolites as tiny peacekeepers circulating through your system. The microbiota gut-brain axis is no longer a speculation. The microbial metabolites and immune signals from the gut influences brain functions, from stress response to mood and cognitive clarity. Reviews in early human data shows that fermented foods and certain probiotics can reduce anxiety and improve mood in people with existing symptoms. The evidence in otherwise healthy people is growing but mixed. That's why some people report less brain fog and a steadier focus after adding small, regular servings of fermented foods. It's not magic, it's gut-derived signaling. Start small, a few tablespoons to a small cup per day. Rotate varieties. Kimchi one day, natto another day, and then sauerkraut third. Pair those living foods with fiber-rich foods, resistant starches, whole grains, and legumes, and you get a 1-2 punch: live microbes plus the fibers that feed the resident community. Fermented foods are generally safe and healthful, but watch sodium contents, and if you take anticoagulants or have a condition sensitive to vitamin K or fibrinolytic enzymes as found in natto and nattokinase, check with your clinicians before regular consumption. Also, start with small amounts if you are sensitive to histamine or food maps. Small daily servings of living fermented foods are a practical, science-backed way to support digestion, immunity, inflammation, control, and even mood. Okay, so is this real science or just a trendy food hype? The short answer, there's a solid human data supporting meaningful effects, and equally important, some limits and uncertainties. First, microbiome diversity. In a well-controlled human feeding study led by researchers at Stanford, participants who dramatically increased their intake of fermented foods for 10 weeks showed a measurable rise in gut microbiome diversity and simultaneously a significant drop in panel of circulating inflammatory proteins. In plain terms, adding a variety of living fermented foods to the diet helped expand the number of microbial species in the gut and quiet systemic inflammation. That's a big deal because we know from many other studies that greater diversity is linked to resilience and lower disease risk. Second, Immune modulation. The gut is a major immune organ. Beneficial microbes, whether introduced through fermented food or encouraged through diet, send signals that immune cells, encouraging better pathogen defense while reducing inappropriate inflammation. Several reviews and clinical reports have shown improved immune signaling or reduced inflammatory markers after fermented food intervention. Although the exact effect depends on food, the dose, and the study population, in short, fermented foods can positively influence immune tone and but results vary. Third, clinical signals in specific foods. Let's look at two well-studied examples. Kimchi and other fermented brassica vegetables have been tested in randomized trial and scoping reviews. Participants consuming fermented kimchi showed improvement in insulin sensitivity and favorable shifts in cholesterol and triglyceride measures in several studies. These are small to moderate clinical signals, but consistent enough to be noteworthy. Natto, the traditional Japanese fermented soybeans, brings a different sort of bioactives, notably vitamin K as MK7 and an enzyme called nattokinase. Observational and interventional work links natto or nattokinase with blood pressure modulation and anti-atherosclerotic signals in some studies. And MK7 is well known for its role in bone and cardiovascular health. However, results are mixed, and crucially, natto can interact with anticoagulant medications, so clinical oversight is required for some people. So, how do these effects happen? There are three likely mechanisms supported by laboratory and human data. Number one, live microbes can transiently colonize the gut or interact with resident microbes, increasing diversity and competing with pathogenic species. Metabolites, particularly short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, are produced or encouraged by fermentation processes. These metabolites nourishes colon cells, strengthen the gut barrier, and have systemic anti-inflammatory effects. Number three, enzymatic transformations during fermentation reduce anti-nutrients like phytates and pre-digest complex compounds, improving mineral and vitamin bioavailability. Together, these mechanisms form a plausible and evidence-based chain from food to physiologic effect. But let's be candid about limits. Not every fermented food study shows large effects. Trials differ in which foods are used, how much is consumed, the duration of the intervention, and the outcomes measured. Some recent studies show strong effects on inflammatory markers and microbiome matrix. Others find smaller or no significant changes for particular endpoints. Long-term randomized trials that measure heart disease outcomes like heart attacks or diabetes incidences are limited. So the current picture is promising and biologically plausible, but not yet definitive for every health claim. A few practical safety notes. Pasteurization destroys live culture, so refrigerated, unpasteurized products are the way to get living microbes. Many fermented foods are high in sodium and may raise histamine in sensitive individuals, but natto's vitamin K2 and nattokinase content means people on blood thinner needs medical advice before regular consumption. These aren't reasons to avoid fermented foods, they're reasons to be informed and choose wisely. Controlled human trials and high-quality reviews supports the idea of fermented food can increase gut microbiome diversity, modulate immune signaling, and reduce certain inflammatory markers. And specific foods like kimchi and natto show promising metabolic and cardiovascular signals. The evidence is robust enough to recommend trying these foods as part of a balanced diet while acknowledging variability and personalization. Now, in today's fast-paced world, many of us feel drained, sluggish, and disconnected from our bodies. But what if the key to feeling vibrant and energized lies in an ancient tradition? What if the secret to optimal health has been around for centuries, waiting to be rediscovered? Digestive issues, low energy, and weakened immune systems are becoming all too common. Could the modern diet be to blame? Processed foods, antibiotics, stress are disrupting our gut health, leading to a cascade of health problems. Enter fermented food, nature's probiotic-rich powerhouse. Kimchi, natto, and traditionally preserved vegetables have been staples in cultures known for their longevity. These foods are teeming with beneficial bacteria that supports a healthy gut microbiome. Consuming fermented foods regularly can enhance digestion and nutrient absorption, boost immune system, reduce inflammation, improve mental clarity and mood. Studies have shown that fermented food can increase the diversity of gut microbiota, enhance immune function, reduce the risk of chronic disease. So don't wait to start your journey to better health. Visit today and discover how you can transform your well-being. Join the thousands who have embraced the power of fermented foods and are living healthier, happier lives. If you want to know more videos like this, click and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.